Thank you for joining us. Our show today is about a cause that should concern us all and why remembrance is so essential. In our world, we take so much for granted. It's just simply too easy for people to fall out of touch with reality. And the solution is in education. It's imperative for everyone to learn the lessons of humanity's past. One of these lessons, of course, is remembrance of the Holocaust and why neither Jew nor Gentile should ever be permitted to forget the atrocities perpetrated by Nazi Germany during World War II. Our guest today is Franny Sheridan, who very effectively reaches out to audiences everywhere in this very cause. Her story is compelling and unusual, and she'll share with us why it is essential to remember and for everyone to learn the lessons of that dark period in history following these messages.
How distant redemption must have seemed here in this Nazi concentration camp. Empty now, but as shocking and bewildering today as in those days when death and degradation was inflicted upon millions whose belief made them a minority. Cold stones and silent relics stand in gloomy monuments to Jewish lives destroyed. The streets of Warsaw today still bear the memories and the pain shared with those whose last desperate efforts in their fight for freedom is honored here on monuments. Turning darkness into light, despair into hope, a people divided and decimated by war and genocide returns to life. The people of Israel celebrate life. The youth of the land, in their halls of learning, with their teachers, they are millions strong. Replacing the fallen, million children murdered in the Holocaust. Israel's people, born free or brought to freedom along a lifeline of immigration through decades of partnership from more than 80 lands on earth. Living in the present, trusting in the future. Their redemption will endure, for now their destiny is in their own hands, in freedom.
With us now is Frannie Sheridan. Frannie, it's a real pleasure to have you on the Shalom Show finally.
Thank you so much for having me on, Richard.
It's been a while until we could arrange it. Frannie, we just saw this video on remembrance. We saw some scenes of the Holocaust and the answer to the Holocaust, the rebirth of the State of Israel. Why is it so important for neither Jew nor Gentile to be permitted to ever forget that the atrocities perpetrated by Nazi Germany did take place?
Well, it's very current in terms of anti-Semitism that's rampant in the world as we speak. Sadly, anti-Semitism hasn't gone away. And I think more than ever now, we all need to stand together for Israel, Jews and Gentiles together, to band together, against the evil in the world. And one of the sadly strongest examples of that is the Holocaust, which was, one of the very most hideous crimes perpetrated against humanity and certainly the Jews.
Well, Frannie, there's absolutely no doubt that remembrance is essential so humanity does not repeat the mistakes of the past. I'd like to ask you a little bit about your past. You were raised Catholic. Your family tried to conceal the fact that you were Jewish. Tell our audience a little bit about your astonishing story.
Well, sure. I, of course, didn't know that I was actually Jewish, the child actually of two Jewish Holocaust survivors as a little girl, because when you're brought up to believe what your parents tell you when you're a child, you don't question it. I didn't have anything to compare it to. Both my parents survived the Holocaust by a whisker, losing the majority of their families, made it to North America, to Canada specifically. They met in Montreal, Orthodox Jewish at the time. And my father had his first medical practice in a teeny tiny little town in the middle of Saskatchewan, which is akin to the American Midwest. And my parents were the only visibly and audibly very Jewish people in this town, and, Orthodox Jewish. So one day, an anti-Semitic doctor, Dr. Schmidt, and his wife beat my father and left him for dead in his office in front of a patient, smearing the walls with anti-Semitic slogans. And so my father's post-traumatic stress was re-triggered, and he thought, what is the point of remaining Jewish, only to lose another family again, this time in North America. And the assailants were fined a paltry sum of $15 for assault.
They were caught and they were
fined.
not punished appropriately.
Well, for $15, you know what I mean? And my dad had been literally left unconscious and almost dead in his office. And so he really convinced, is a nice way of saying it, my proudly Jewish mother to convert to Catholicism, relocate, anglicize our family name from Siegel to Sheridan, cut off ties with all of our remaining extended relatives, and relocate. So by the time I rolled around, I thought we were this nice little Irish Catholic family. We went to church every Sunday. My last name is Sheridan. I was baptized, the whole Megillah.
Absolutely fascinating. When did you decide to write a play about your life?
I was touring as a stand-up comic, and in 1995 was approached by a small-time theater producer who needed another dramatic show to complete a bill of dramatic solo shows that he was producing. And in a nutshell, I'd always had this internal voice that aided me, tell your story. At first I thought it meant, write shtick, do stand-up comedy, but it continued to eat at me. And in the very middle of my stand-up act, I had positioned a bit about the ridiculousness of pretending to be something you're not. I can't remember the bit, but it received, really people really liked it. And I had positioned it in the middle of my act because I was brought up on a daily basis, told when I was a child, never, ever, ever tell anyone you're Jewish. And that's after I found out I was Jewish when I was probably about 9 years old. I'd have to be hypnotized to know exactly when. At the dinner table, my dad said something about a Jewish. And I said, well, Daddy, what's a Jewish? So he began to unleash his Holocaustica and all his stories of survival and persecution and what he'd been through. But it was always followed by the admonition, never, ever, ever tell anyone that you're Jewish, because it could surely get you killed. And I was told that repeatedly on a daily basis. So when you're, even as it may seem rational and irrational, but when you're brought up with this terrible secret that you're told repeatedly will get your family and you killed, it's not so easy for you to tell it. But it ate at me. It was like something in me needed to get it out. And so I went ahead and I phoned my father, who by the time I decided to write the play, my first version of my play about my family story in 96, had retired and was living in his native Vienna as a Catholic. And I told him that I wanted to turn our family story into a play. Of course, he wasn't thrilled. He actually threatened to, legal action, and some of my siblings did as well. And that does not come from a place of, a bad place in them. They really thought that I was going to put our family in jeopardy, and everything, that my father had tried so hard to help us with, i.e. conceal our Jewishness, that I was now going to reveal it, the little sister, making this play. And yet, so I just couldn't live with not doing it. So I went ahead and I was like pulled to do it, and I wrote this play, and it really changed my life, and thank God it impacted my family's lives as well in very positive ways.
Very important, I would say, for people to share with you these experiences and those of many other people who have similar tragic stories. How many times have you brought your message before the audiences in North America and elsewhere?
Oh, well, I've had the great good fortune of being able to perform my earlier show, which was called The Walton Steins, and my current show called Confessions of a Jewish Shiksa, ... Dancing on Hitler's Grave. I would say, at this point, probably about 120 times, Richard. I mean, I started in 1996 with the show, and I took a 5-year hiatus to rewrite the show. It was originally a documentary. And it was very well received, to the point where, although I received these legal threats from my family, as a result of my initial very, very rough performance, there happened to be a journalist in the audience who wrote a review in the Jerusalem Report magazine, which is distributed internationally, was read by extended members of my mother's family who'd been searching for us for over 45 years, ever since my father forced us to go underground. And so I began to get, these incredible phone calls from all over the world, from these lovely relatives of ours that have been looking for us. And because of that, and the positive reception to the play, my father wrote me a beautiful letter of thanks, and said that I had given him the courage to go back to his roots, which he'd never left in his heart. And he went to the Jewish Community Center in Vienna and publicly redeclared himself a Jew. And one of my sisters, who, a lovely, successful person, but was married to an anti-Semite, divorced him after the play. So in other words, the incremental amount of healing that happened is really what is the fire that keeps me wanting to take the play as far as I could. So I rewrote it. I took 5 years to rewrite it as a more theatrically realized work, because I feel a very strong responsibility to get it out into the multicultural milieu so that it can be heard not only by Jews. It's wonderful for me to perform for a Jewish audience. It's always like a homecoming of sorts. It's the people who aren't Jewish that need to hear this story.
Absolutely, I would say. Now, you've caught the attention of other individuals, including Arthur Hiller, the producer or director, I believe, the director of Love Story, the famous movie of years ago. How did that occur?
That was another miracle that happened in my life. He's, first of all, he just happens to be a very lovely human being who I've had the incredible good luck of learning so much from. And Arthur came to me as a result of some press that was given to me, a beautiful 9-page feature article actually that was written by a terrific journalist in Canada, National Peace, and Arthur's best friend read the article. And in the article it said that I'd written the first draft of a multicast feature film script based on my play on my story, and he asked to read it. I thought it was a joke. I got a phone call, and it was really Arthur Hiller. So he read the script and then asked me if I would consider having him direct, and it took all of like 1/1,000,000th of 1/4 of a second for me to go, I think Mr. Hiller, that would be fine this once,
Certainly.
So we worked together for many years. We had actually a deal with a Canadian production company. It didn't happen, and so Arthur, sadly at the age of 86, lost his vision due to macular degeneration. He's still grandfathering the project, but we're just being very selective. I'm working with another screenwriter, David Walensky, who's terrific, but we're just really wanting to make sure it's the right fit for the film, because it didn't happen with this initial production company. So it's an edgy, interesting screenplay, and the right people, I'm sure, will appear.
Franny, this is all very interesting, but we have to pause for these commercial messages. We'll be right back. We're back with Franny Sheridan. Franny, before we continue with our interview, I'd like us to see a portion of your stage production. So we'll go ahead and see it right now.
Once upon a time, there was a little girl and her family who were always hiding. You see, both my parents were Jewish, but they raised us Catholic. The thing is, we looked and sounded about as Catholic as Kreplach. We weren't so convincing. My father, Bernie, tried his best to impersonate Santa Claus at Christmas, right? But basically ended up portraying Sigmund Freud. He was from Vienna. Instead of saying, ho, 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 Merry Christmas, he'd say, oi, 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 do you have problems? Then he'd diagnose us with a condition according to what presents we asked for. It'd be like, Daddy, this year I want a Barbie doll that says I love you when I press a button. Oi, Franny, sadly you suffer from a control disorder. But Daddy, I'm only 8 years old. Good thing we caught it early. That was my papa. And my proudly Jewish German mother, Liesel, never wanted to do this Catholic shtick, So every Christmas Eve, when neighbors would drop by, she'd greet them dressed as a pregnant Virgin Mary. And when they asked about her condition, she'd say, making sure my father could hear, yeah, I don't know how this could have happened. You see, Bernie and I haven't had sex in years. Their attempt to pull off Christmas was meshuggah. But let's start at the beginning, before I knew I was Jewish. The strongest memories I have of my family, the Sheridans, occurred in the place we met most frequently, the dining room of my family home in Ottawa, Canada, when I was 8 years old.
Franny, this was really very nice. I'm quite impressed with your stage performance there. I'd like to ask you, you've done all sorts of shows for organizations like WITSO. Tell our audience a little bit about your philanthropic work.
Sure. Well, I just returned from Montreal, where I was delighted to be a mere cog in the wheel, performing a fundraiser for the Montreal Jewish General Hospital's Children's Ward. And, it just feels good to be able to help them. They were able to raise a significant amount of money for their organization. So it's a terrific opportunity for me to give back in my own way. And, I've been hired by WITSO here in Aventura, Florida. I've done for different organizations, the Jewish Federation, the Temple Emmanuel of Palm Beach, etc. And would love to do more. It's a pleasure and an honor to have something to share.
I was thinking from one extreme to another. Here you were as a child, not even knowing you're Jewish, and today you're doing what you're doing. And actually, a member of your family was presented to the President of the United States, Obama. Tell our audience a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. It was magnificent. My lovely uncle Gerd, who I refer to as my rab-uncle because he's an Orthodox Jewish rabbi, he had his congregation in Silver Spring, Maryland. He's now retired, and a prominent volunteer at the Washington Holocaust Museum. He was invited up just last year by President Obama, together with Elie Wiesel and other survivors, for a memorial to light one of the 6 memorial candles in honor of the 6 million lost. And just the fact that, here we are 70 years after Hitler's attempts to rid the world of all Jews, all non-Aryans, nothing to do with politics, but a black president, the greatest superpower of the world, and an old rabbi sharing the stage to honor the tens of millions, of all nations who didn't survive and those who did. And it's just, I'm so proud of him,
I'd like to ask you how you perceive the challenges facing Jewish life in general at this time in history.
Well, I think more than ever, we need to stand together for Israel. As my mother's character says in the play, if only we'd had an Israel to go to in 1938, her entire family and my father's might still be alive. So I think that we really all need to stand together in the light and to, as Jews, and to connect with others from different cultures, groups, to stand together for Israel and to stand together for good against evil. I think, we just really need to rise up and let go of any pettiness at this point.
Franny, what are your plans for the future?
Well, with my play, I'm thrilled to say I'm just about to perform a 3-week run in Boca Raton at Zinman Hall. And then in the new year, I'll be performing in Montreal, in Miami. My head's still in Montreal. Ate too much cheese, you know how it is. With the Area Stage Company for 3 weeks, and I'll be in New York for a month. We're in negotiations right now to solidify the dates, but that'll be in 2011. So I'm going to tour the play, and my goal, Richard, is to tour it far and wide, and really get the message out there and it's a character-driven piece now. It's not a documentary. I've moved ahead and rewritten it as a compelling piece of theater, and it has 17 different characters. My uncle's one of them. So it's a real vehicle for me as an actor, a performance piece. And then I'd like to, have the right people assemble, and I'm sure they're manifesting as we speak, to make the film and, make a lovely picture.
Well, I must comment and think that, and state right here for our audience that in our modern world where there's so much trivial nonsense presented on stage and in entertainment in general, it is refreshing and nice to have something of substance, such as your play presented to an audience worldwide. I want to thank you very much for being with us today.
My absolute pleasure, and I really feel that this is such an important program, and I'm thrilled to see my friends are all getting it, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful. So it's been my absolute pleasure to be here. Thanks so much, Richard.
We have to have you on at the show again one of these days.
Oh, I hope so. Look forward to that.
Absolutely. Thank you for being with us.
My absolute pleasure.
This concludes our special show for today with Frannie Sheridan. I'm Richard Peritz. Thank you for being with us.